No one knows what it's like to be the bad man. To be the bad man. Behind blue eyes. Because Batman has blue eyes. You ever seen him? Boo physics. Greetings everyone. Yes, it is that time. It's time to review the epic finale that is brought to us by Rocksteady to the famous Arkham franchise. And it's also one of my most anticipated games of 2015, formerly 2014 until I got pushed. But you guys know that I was dying to play this game. I was counting the days. I was feeling that old school feeling of waiting for a video game to release. And then once I got it, coming home every day from work or now school to play it. I haven't felt that way in a really long time, and I'm glad that out of all games to be released in recent memory, this is one of them. You saw me unbox the limited edition. That's how devoted I was to this being the last one in the series. So I'm like, okay, we gotta commemorate it somehow by getting the limited edition. And I went and I put in all the money to get that. I have put in the countless hours into this game to be able to play as much of it as possible before bringing you guys my review of it. So here it is. Finally, let's get down to it. It's time to review Batman Arkham Knight. And in the epic finale to the Arkham trilogy that is completely disowning Arkham Origins, which makes me feel bad because I feel like Arkham Origins is that bastard son that the dad doesn't want. The mom is trying to treat very well, but trying to juggle all these jobs, but the son's not getting enough attention from both parents, so they're gonna go off and do something different. Superman, possibly. But here we have the actual conclusion to the trilogy that Rocksteady started back in 2009 with Arkham Asylum, and in this entry we have Scarecrow threatening to blow up a fear toxin bomb within Gotham City, and it's up to Batman to stop him, but standing in his way is a new mysterious foe named the Arkham Knight, who has this personal vendetta against Batman. So now Batman has a lot on his plate, and it is up to him to call upon his resources as well as his friends to take back his beloved city and end everything once and for all. So that right there would be probably the main obstacle for me if I was somebody over at Rocksteady. How do you do it? How do you end the game that is being advertised as the final entry in the Arkham franchise? A franchise so beloved by many players ever since they first started playing that first game in 2009 with Arkham Asylum. How do you end things and satisfy, or at least try to satisfy everybody, because you're not going to be able to make everybody happy, but how do you do it in a way that gives everybody involved with not just the making of the game but also the characters within the game a proper send-off? I believe Rocksteady did it in spades with Arkham Knight. I was very satisfied with the story. Being that this is the final and much more darker chapter in the series, the stakes are risen to a ultimate level. The emotional beats are struck in the very best way possible, and every character is handled with the utmost care and very respectful of the source material. I often say that about an awful lot of comic book adaptations, whether it be video games or movies, but I feel like Arkham Knight is one of the finer examples of doing that. And man, it manages to sew so many plots, but it works in a video game because the video game is planned to be anywhere between 15 to 20 hours, which is around the running time that this game was. And because it's so large and vast, not only in the scope and the scale of the city that you get to explore, but also the story that you're dealing with, you make time for some of these characters to appear and find themselves interwoven with the story. This wouldn't work for a 2 hour to 2.5 hour Batman movie, but it does work for a video game, and I feel like this is probably the best story in the trilogy, better than City. I actually prefer this over City. I prefer the Asylum over City, and I feel like I'm dogging on City too much. I still love the game. I think that that's a great game. I still give it like a low 9 or so, but it was still a 9 nonetheless. However, Arkham Knight, it may have been because it's the most recent one I've played, but there was something about the story that handled Batman very well, that struck at the heart of what that character was all about. And without going into too much detail, let's just say that if you like some very surreal films, some Fincher-esque or David Lynch type films, there's going to be an aspect about Batman Arkham Knight that you are going to love. Now, as amazing as I thought the story was, that it's not without its problems. Every perfect story is not necessarily perfect to a T. There's got to be some blemishes here and there. And there's several things about the story that I could nitpick, especially things that were a little obvious, and the story tries to make it like, oh, it was this big discovery, but I'm like, no, you know, I can nitpick different little details, but I'm not going to do that, because I could do that with even some of the games and movies that I love, like Inception, another Nolan property. I could take that and pick apart certain things that I was like, okay, why couldn't you do that before, or why didn't you take a chance on this? Similarly to the story for Arkham Knight. However, out of all things that I could talk about in terms of the negative aspect of the story, it would have to be the Arkham Knight himself. Now, the character himself, while he's on screen, is pretty badass. I love the design of the character. I like how there's this mysterious foe that has this personal vendetta versus Batman, and the force that drives him to this psychotic nature, and to see why it is that he is pursuing Batman with such vigor. But being that this is Rocksteady's final game, it's going to be imminent that the Arkham Knight's identity will be revealed by the end of the game. So that's not necessarily a spoiler. Who the Arkham Knight is of course a spoiler that's going to be saved for a spoiler discussion video that I am planning on making, because there's plenty about this game that I can talk about within a spoiler video, including the Arkham Knight himself. But let's just say that when the Arkham Knight's identity was revealed, I was slightly disappointed. It didn't bother me. I wasn't angered by it, but Rocksteady said something about the Arkham Knight that was very intriguing, and I'm not going to say what Rocksteady said, because I feel like if I were to reiterate that statement, that would put ideas in people's heads. It would narrow down the chances of who this character could be, so I'm not going to do that. But I'm just going to say that Rocksteady said that there was going to be something about the Arkham Knight that you're going to be discovering through the game, and when his identity was revealed, I'm like, nope. You lied. You pretty much lied, Rocksteady. You went with a safe bet. You know, like hiring Billy Crystal to host the Oscars is a safe bet. The way Breaking Bad ended, though amazing, was still pretty safe. They did a similar thing here with the Arkham Knight, and they twisted certain things around to try to make it original, but in the end, it didn't really end up being all that original. So in no way, shape, or form am I saying that the Arkham Knight was handled badly. I just feel like he could have been handled a little bit better in terms of the reveal for his identity. There would have been plenty of more opportunities to take this character in a whole different direction. But man, oh man, I am willing to overlook that slight gripe I have over the Arkham Knight's identity for a certain scene-stealing element that gets incorporated not just into the story of Arkham Knight, but pretty much the environment of Arkham Knight, the tone of Arkham Knight. They put something in here that I was not expecting at all, and every time it would appear, all lights were on this element that was reoccurring throughout the story for Arkham Knight. And of course, I can't talk about anything else about it without spoiling it, but it was a humongous surprise. It was a welcome to form, and it was something that made sense to be put into Arkham Knight, especially the way it leads up to the ending. It was just perfect. It was perfect. It was probably my favorite part about the story for Arkham Knight. Kudos to you, Rocksteady. Kudos to you. Bravo. And for your information, no, it's not the Riddler. It's not the Riddler. I just put the question mark, you know, to keep up appearances about the mystery about what this scene-stealing aspect is, but I'm just going to leave it at that. And the ending of the story for the game is amazing. I love how it sparks discussion about what exactly did that ending mean. It's very surreal. It's just, man, it's a great ending. Honestly, I really appreciated this ending, and some people might not like it or love it, but I feel like more people might have issues with how you reach the ending rather than the ending itself. But I'll save that for the gameplay section of this review. Whether you love it or hate it, we're reaching the point where developers are not going to make any more PS3 or Xbox 360 games. And I feel like Arkham Knight is one of those clear examples where they said it's just going to be the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And even though I am a little irked by the fact that the PC launch for this game was atrocious, and even though I played this on the PS4, some people are going to look at me and be like, hey, you shouldn't talk, you played on the PS4, you should be fine. Still, that's not an excuse. Even though I love Rocksteady, I love the product that they have been producing, I feel like they should have spent more time with the PC port, and it might have been WB's fault, I don't know, but things should have been looked ahead of time, especially when a certain company knew about these issues, but then still pumped out the game. Still, that's a whole nother discussion entirely. Here I am to review the actual game. And going back to what I was initially talking about, being that this is a game that was focused more on being released on this current generation of consoles and not the last one, this allowed for Rocksteady to port over all of their talent and all of their skill and all of their hard work and effort into developing a really beautiful working game, or at least working on the consoles. And the best way that I can summarize how beautiful and gorgeous this game looks is that what used to be the CG cutscenes for I believe the 6th generation of video games, so the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, the GameCube, what used to be the CG cutscenes for those games, and maybe a few for the early games of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 and Wii, is now the actual in-game engine for these for games in current gen consoles, especially Batman Arkham Knight. So many instances I would find myself just gliding over the city just to look at it. I wasn't even going towards a certain mission or a certain objective. I was just like, no, I just want to glide around and just look at the city and look how amazing it looks. Still wish it was a bit more populated, because they still find a way to get people out of the city via the threat of this fear toxin bomb that Scarecrow threatens to unleash. But it's a little bit more plausible than, oh no, it's snowing outside, we gotta go inside, nobody's outside, like in Arkham Origins. Still, there is a level of populace down on the ground by different thugs from different gangs, from various supervillains, as well as Scarecrow's thugs and the Arkham Knight's own militia. And seeing this city being overtaken by these thugs, it still feels like this character all on its own. And having different monuments like the Clock Tower or Wayne Industries International Building down, over there in the distance, it's still amazing to look at. And besides the design of the city itself, all the particle effects, seeing the rain drip off of Batman's cape and his cowl, and the lighting is just extraordinary. I'm amazed by how far we've come. And sure, the PC version offers a few extra particles. Like I saw some gameplay footage where Batman is gliding, and whenever he moves the cape, rain actually like flops off his cape, and that's cool. But it did come at a price with several glitches and game-breaking bugs for that particular port. But it's not just the city that looks great. All the characters look amazing. Again, those CG cutscenes from those previous generation of consoles is now the in-game material. So whenever you see characters with expressions like these on their faces, and they're emoting and they're talking, and then the camera zooms out, and then poof, you're already playing, I still can't get over that. I really can't, especially bringing back memories of me playing on the Nintendo 64 and not thinking that this was going to be possible, but it was. And the voice work is also great. Everybody's on point, especially Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy just nails it. So many instances where I'm like, man, I wish I had Kevin Conroy's voice. It would open up so many opportunities in my life to do things, including being Batman. I mean, it's extraordinary. The only thing that I think people will definitely notice about the design for these characters this time around in Arkham Knight is that there are some slight inconsistencies. Like, for example, Poison Ivy here looks nothing like she did in Arkham City or Arkham Asylum, but it serves the story. That's the reason why I was able to forgive it, is because if there was any kind of rehaul with a certain character's design, it's because it needed to fit the story in terms of the tone or the layer of character development that we're applying to that character. And without going into spoilers, let's just say that the change to Ivy's look serves her role in the story. It made sense, because I could definitely not see the Ivy from Asylum and City taking part in the role that this one fits into Arkham Knight. It just doesn't work. Same thing with James Gordon. Even though he looks different than he did in Asylum, and he looks more reminiscent of the Gordon we saw in Arkham Origins, it still fit his role, as well as Jonathan Banks providing his voice. Jonathan Banks, Mike from Breaking Bad, comes to voice Gordon this time around. I don't know if he voiced Gordon in the previous games, I might be wrong about that, but he does a terrific job as Jim Gordon. And again, changing the style of these characters serves the story. Others didn't change so much. I mean, maybe they added some hairs or even took away some hair, like with Penguin, but it's all about the story. So if they're making changes to serve the story and make it better, I'm all for that. However, just because I managed to play this on the PlayStation 4 doesn't mean that the game was completely saved from glitches and bugs. Nothing that broke the game, fortunately, unlike the PSC port, but still some instances that were definitely notable and did kind of break the immersion or the flow of the game, mainly during the last third of the game. I mean, we're not talking Batman Arkham Origins. It's not that buggy. It's not. In fact, the first 2/3 of this game is very solid, very crisp and polished. That's the word I was looking for. But there was something about that last act, that last third, that caters to the story and to the scope and the scale of that story that needed a lot within this world of Gotham that you get to explore, spread across these 3 islands that you can navigate either on foot or by gliding or through the Batmobile. I'll talk about that later. But certain things get added, and as you progress through the story, you come across different characters that unlock certain side missions, and because they unlock certain side missions, a new gang is added, and more NPCs are added to the game, and more AI, more particles. The environment even changes at one point, and so it got a little bit overwhelming for the game to handle, and because of that, certain things started to, the seams started to show a little bit towards that last act. For example here, I knocked this guy unconscious through the staircase, or through this little, through this little staircase, and his anatomy changed ever so slightly, as you can tell here from the X-ray. I don't perceive this to be possible by, the human body is not meant to work that way. So yeah, it started to show a little bit towards the end, certain glitches that you wouldn't expect from Rocksteady, but still nothing that broke the game. Just stuff to really note about and to mention in a review, such as this. So we saw in Arkham Origins that Warner Bros. Montreal pretty much took the engine from those previous 2 games, copied and pasted into theirs, and didn't really bother to innovate things or change things up all that much. There's certain details here and there, but overall it was the same mechanic with the same system, only just not as refined. It was a little bit easier to get hit, but it was still the same thing, and we can kind of say this similar thing here, where you got the returning mechanics of stringing together these combos, mashing the square button in my case, and kicking dudes' asses. But whenever another guy would approach, you press the triangle button, you counter, and you string these combos together to keep the flow and the momentum going. And of course, you fill up your meter. You can deliver these final blows, these special combos, all this good stuff. But they managed to include way more things in there that just makes the experience almost feel new again. It brought me back to Arkham Asylum. This time around, you got what I imagine to be the most broad upgrade system that the Arkham games have had. I mean, when I brought that thing up and you got this huge reticle of all these different branches of upgrades that you can develop as you proceed, and you earn all these upgrade points whenever you beat a mission, or whenever you do something in a side mission, or you do these AR missions where you can practice your mechanics, whether it be as Batman or through the Batmobile, and you learn different things, and they're practically tutorials. But whenever you do them, you earn these upgrade points. And you can spend these upgrade points on boosting the attributes of not just Batman, but also the Batmobile, similar to how you've done in the past. But here, there's just way more stuff that you can collect and earn and buy with those upgrade points, because Rocksteady went ahead and included so much more in the gameplay system that it was a little bit overwhelming at times. And because it was a little overwhelming, the learning curve might just be steeper, especially for people who have not played the Arkham games since like Arkham City. They decided to skip Arkham Origins and they haven't played for a while. You might struggle, actually. I mean, sure, you've played those previous 2 games, but if it's been a while, you might just struggle a little bit, because at the beginning, they hardly tell you what to press. It's almost like Rocksteady said, hey, you're a humongous Batman Arkham fan, so we're not really going to spend all that much teaching you what to do and what not to do. I mean, as soon as you jump into Batman's shoes or cowl, it's right there. You know, the city's yours for the taking. It's not going to say, press forward to move or press X to glide off. It's not going to do that. You just go and you do it and you learn on your own. The game will show you hints here and there, but mainly for the new stuff. But the stuff that you should have already known from those previous games, you're going to have to learn on your own. However, the new things that are added are humongous welcome. One of the things that I've noted were these environmental attacks, where you can use way more things within the environment to fight bad guys. Like, for example, here, you got Batman shoving a dude's head into an electrical box. And sure, at times you have to suspend your disbelief that Batman just didn't flat out kill that one guy. I mean, so many instances I'm like, that guy's dead. I don't care who you are, that guy's dead. But they try to make it so that these guys are supposedly unconscious at the end of this whole thing. But they add like environmental attacks where you can use certain things within the environment. You can even use some of the weapons that the bad guys would often use against you. And you also got these different combos that you wouldn't have done before. You know, shoot off electrical charges from your disruptor, or you can use a human being. There are instances in the game, whether it be in the main story or in the side missions, where you can actually call upon your your Bat family members, such as Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing, or Tim Drake, Robin, or even Catwoman at certain points, that you can actually jump into their role and control them, similar to how you would in the challenge maps for Arkham City, only this time you're actually using them within the single player mode. Being that there's no actual challenge modes at that, but also because they found a way to or organically or naturally fit these characters into the universe, even if they don't have to do with the main story of taking down Scarecrow. They still managed to find a good way, a good balance to fit these characters into this this interpretation of the city of Gotham, and jumping into them. It feels similar to how you played as them in Arkham City, like the way Nightwing or Robin or Catwoman fight, their style, their movements are similar to how they played out in that game, but that was just challenge mode. Here, you actually fight off bad guys that actually have to do with the story, and not just that, but you also have to work together with Batman, who's always going to be in the room with you, and at times you can even string together enough combos to pull a dual takedown where a Nightwing would throw a bad guy towards Batman, and then Batman would take him down in midair in slow motion, and every single time I would do that, I would feel like such a badass. I don't care who I was, whether it be Batman or Nightwing or Robin, every single time it got me, and it was a really cool way to keep things fresh and not just feel like Batman all the time. Even though being Batman all the time is awesome, I still welcomed the ability to jump into these guys GTA 5 style and play as them and change up the variety of the game. And not only did they raise the stakes for the story, they raised the stakes for the gameplay as well, because this time around, the AI for the enemies is a bit smarter in my opinion. This time they kind of caught on to what people would often say about Arkham City, and most notably Arkham Asylum, where people would be tempted to use detective mode all the time, and they're like, oh, I could just use detective mode all the time, so I can pick out all my different guys, jump to every gargoyle, and then do an inverted takedown, poof, done, move on to the next room. This time around, you really can't do that, especially towards the end of the game, because the militia has advanced technology that can really thwart some of Batman's plans, especially when you got a villain like Arkham Knight leading them, a villain that knows Batman all too well. So he provided the AI with some technologies that might make the game a bit more challenging for you. There are instances where you can't use the detective mode for that long, otherwise somebody's going to pick it out and be able to zero in on your location, and poof, you have to move quickly. You need to take off detective mode, you can't use it all the time, and you need to move from place to place. Sometimes I would jump to, I remember the first time this happened, I would jump into an underground grate. Yeah, you always got those in all the Arkham games. I would jump right in there, take a guy out with silent takedown, go back in. A guy managed to see me, but I'm like, alright, it's fine. Even though they saw me, they're just going to be like, oh, where'd they go? This would be often the case with Arkham Asylum and City. This time, they're like, he's under the throat grates. Smoke him out. Throw a bomb. I'm like, oh shit, oh shit. Yeah, these guys mean business. So Batman's going to have to mean even more business. And that's up to you. The game also manages to find a clever use for not just the gadgets that Batman has in his utility belt, but also the suit itself. There's this mechanic that stuck out to me the most. There's plenty of other things that you can do, but there's this mechanic that I really like, which is called a fear takedown, which is that if you fill up your fear meter by doing a silent takedown, you can then take out a certain amount of enemies in succession. Basically, it's like God mode, essentially, only more realistic for Batman, because if you manage to creep up on like 3 enemies, you can sneak up from behind, they would be highlighted in yellow, and then you would press the square button to execute fear takedown. And so you take one guy out, slow-mo, aim the reticle at the guy and highlight the guy that you want to take out next, press square, take that guy out, and then highlight the next guy, and form this chain of takedowns one after the other. You can only do 3 initially, but thanks to the upgrade system, you can then progress and take down 4 or even 5 at some point, but that's the limit. And sure, this is a cool way to take down like 3 or 4 guys, but it's at first it's like, okay, I'm just going to do that all the time, but then later on when you're introduced with even more challenging enemies, you really need to strategize on which enemies you're going to use this fear takedown, and what other enemies you're going to use your gadgets, your disruptor, your hacking device, this little gadget that allows you to mimic other characters' voices so that you can then lure them to something that will then explode and knock them out. There were so many instances that I would actually use these gadgets. There were bits in Arkham Asylum and City where I would just use the same gadget over and over because that was just my playstyle. Here, I actually made myself to use these other gadgets, and I found really clever uses of those gadgets, and made me feel even more like the Batman. And the biggest gadget of all that you get to use as the Batman is the Batmobile, the one element that Rocksteady was pushing since the beginning. And I'm surprised to see how many people just simply don't like the Batmobile whenever they play Arkham Knight. I am probably in the minority who really enjoys the Batmobile. Now, do I agree that maybe we could have used a little less of the Batmobile in certain situations where I'm like, I think Batman could have taken care of that all on his own? Yeah. You know, there's instances where the Batmobile was becoming a little over-reliant because of how much it was able to do. I'm like, I would like to use Batman here. But I feel like it's a bit underappreciated how often the game would allow you to choose either to navigate Gotham City with the Batmobile or simply just jump right out, rappel with your grappling gun up onto the rooftop, and then glide from there on. The Batmobile honestly still made me feel like Batman. There's just so many fun mechanics with the Batmobile, whether it be racing through the city streets, chasing down bad guys, chasing down these militia army tanks and shooting missiles at them, while other ones would try to ram me off the side, but then I would ram them back, and whenever I would take one of them out, it would slow down, and just see them be destroyed and explode, and they get to explode because apparently they're unmanned military vehicles, so they're allowed to explode, therefore they're not killing anybody. But it's still awesome to see them blow up when you shove them over to the side, Fast and the Furious style, and shooting missiles at them. It just felt good, and then seeing how destructible the city can be when you're behind the wheel of the Batmobile, it's just, it has a humongous wow factor for me. But then there's this other mode called the battle mode that the Batmobile can take upon, where it transforms into, my friend calls it a spider mode because it walks around like a spider, and he would get creeped out when you play the game. To this day I still don't understand what he was talking about, but the Batmobile then becomes practically a tank that you can then shift from side to side, up and down, and take out these much heavier military vehicles that are practically tanks and are aiming right at you. And it almost becomes a game of Battleship, where you just shift out of their sights, take your shot, but then they would take a shot at you. You need to move out of their way, move out of their sights. And there's certain instances where the game will play a game of cat and mouse with you in the form of the Batmobile and tank mode. And I personally found it to be quite fun. Not just those battles, but also other things that the Batmobile can do, like take down these walls with its power winch, or pull off a Batman Forever and drive up the side of a wall, like in Batman Forever when we did that. He's like that. I'm like, wow. You made something that looked really silly in a campy Batman movie and made it really cool in a very serious Batman game. And come on, whether you like or dislike the Batmobile, there's no denying how awesome it is to see Batman swerve in the Batmobile and then instantly jump out and land right in front of it, you know, superhero style. Come on, that never gets old. Much like the other Arkham games, there's plenty of other stuff to do on the side besides the main story. And most, if not at least half of the stuff that you get to do on the side is very meaty. It's filled with plenty of content, and some of which has to deal with characters that would be very famous amongst the rogue gallery, such as Two-Face or Penguin. And it's interesting to see Batman chasing them down, especially since they're taking advantage of this occupation of Gotham. And seeing these characters is cool. Seeing them on the side is a little weird, especially iconic villains such as Two-Face. But still, it's cool that they included them in there. And some of the side missions are just downright fun and very interesting, and sometimes even darker, or as dark as the main story. The one that really weirded me out is the one where you find all these different bodies throughout Gotham. Somebody's taking these bodies and mutilating them and stringing them up, and you have to investigate who. And let's just say that by the end, I'm like, wow, this went from Batman to Saw. The reason why I say most is because I feel like some of the side missions do feel a little bit padded out, especially anything that has to do with the militia. Because most of the stuff that has to do with the militia is nothing but just looking for checkpoints or looking for watchtowers and then taking them down. There's certain bombs planted throughout the city. You need to get rid of them, make this controlled explosion to detonate them without actually causing any kind of damage or harm to anybody else. And they simply just took the first time that you would do any of these that you would actually have to do in the main story, and then just multiply it by like a dozen or like 2 dozen even at some points. And that's pretty much all you have to do for that side mission. And sure, the end goal becomes kind of interesting, especially after the story kind of gets out of the way. The militia takes, let's just say, a certain aspect of the militia takes a turn that I thought was kind of neat, and it felt more like fan service, but pretty neat fan service. And I was actually driven to want to get to that end point, but I struggled a bit. I struggled a bit by going to these different islands, looking for the checkpoints, looking for the towers, and sure, it offered me some to do, but it just got mildly repetitive because it's just doing the same thing over and over. And then there's the structure of the ending corresponding with the gameplay. So hopefully this isn't a bit of a spoiler, because I'm not going to say what happens in the actual ending for the story of the game. That's being saved up for the spoiler discussion. But I am going to mention how you get the ending. Basically, when you wrap up the main story for the game will then proceed on to allow you to finish off doing everything else that is required to do in Gotham to at least get half of the ending. The game then tells you you need to apprehend a certain amount of Gotham's Most Wanted to get the ending of the story for the game. And even then you get kind of sort of like the half, at the semi-version of the ending. To get the true ending, you need to get 100% completion on Batman Arkham Knight. And to me, at first I'm like, okay, 100% completion. Oh wait, there's this guy called the Riddler who decides to who has all the time in the world for some reason to put all of these trophies, all these Riddler trophies spread across all 3 islands of the city. All 243 Riddle trophies. Yep. YouTube it is. I'm not kidding. I looked up the actual ending on YouTube because there was no way in hell I was going to do all 243 riddles. Prior to that, there's these puzzles that you need to solve with Catwoman, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to definitely do those. Those sound very fun. But beyond that, you have to do the trophies, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm at 96.4%. I did everything else, literally everything else. All the checkpoints, all the towers, all the bombs, and every other side mission, did it all. Including the main story, did it all. All that's left is the Riddler trophies. Really? So I guess you can count me in with some people that aren't a huge fan of the game making you do an 100% completion to get the actual real ending. Now, I'm not as angered as some folks because there is this thing called YouTube where you can look up the ending in high definition at that. But I will admit I can understand their frustration because you do want to get this feeling of satisfaction of actually having the controller in your hand, having played as Batman, and then you get the ending that you deserve, the one that you need, and the one that you deserve. So it is kind of slightly bogus that the game would make you do this 100% completion. But at the same time, it makes sense for the ending. Again, without going into spoilers, let's say it makes sense for the ending. Because after that, you're left with this impression on your face that you're like, okay, what is there to really do now? The bottom line is that Arkham Knight was indeed the game that I was hoping for. Despite its slight shortcomings, whether it be with the Arkham Knight's identity, or a slight overabundance of the Batmobile, or the fact that the ending comes at the cost of having to play countless hours to get that 100% completion, which is definitely not me, but again, there's this thing called YouTube. You can definitely look up the ending there. Arkham Knight is an experience that I'm not going to forget, especially through some of the hurdles you go through with the actual story of the game, whether it be in the middle or whether it be a mission in the game that took a series of tries to actually complete. There's just so many aspects about Arkham Knight that just hit all the sweet spots for me. I prefer this over Arkham City. I feel like maybe it's on par with Arkham Asylum, but man, there was just so many aspects, but mainly in the presentation, that made me feel like maybe this is just probably better than Arkham Asylum. And needless to say, Arkham Origins withstanding, this is my favorite out of the series. It's my favorite out of the series. I love it. Can't say enough about it, even though I did in this very long video. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and say that Arkham Knight is going to be a solid 9 out of 10. I really want to go a 10 out of 10. I really, really do with this game. But I felt like there were some things that could have definitely been improved, especially in the technological department with some of those glitches towards the last third of the game. And sure, the game was delayed like twice or so, but I would have welcomed it. I would have welcomed it if it meant for a very seamless experience up until those end credits. And I do feel like next time if Rocksteady produces another game, even if it's not the Batman series, if it's just some of the game, don't do the 100% completion thing. Just give us the ending out front, and if we want to complete the game entirely, that should be an option for us. It shouldn't be mandatory. Alright, just letting you guys know. Because there's certain aspects about the game towards the end that makes me feel like Rocksteady has a really good development team to try and do different things outside of the action-adventure genre. And this game actually serves as a preview of that in certain spots. I'm not going to mention which ones those are, but there's certain areas where I'm like, I would like to see Rocksteady do something different. So I bid you guys well tidings over there at Rocksteady. Thank you guys. I can only say thank you for giving us an extraordinary experience with all 3 Batman Arkham games. And I'm going to miss you guys. So let me know what you guys thought of Batman Arkham Knight if you have played it, but if you have not, the fuck's wrong with you? After you have evaluated yourself, if you would like to purchase the game after watching my review, then please use the link in the description below and do so there. It will really help me out a lot. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.